All systems nominal.
Ladies and gentlemen, fellow mech heads and surf and turf enjoyers, above me and to my right, Mr. Brent Evans, art director at Catalyst Games Labs, a man with a long career in the gaming industry, for a time the line developer for BattleTech over at Catalyst Games Lab, a role in which he did some very fine work and got the game back on the map, as far as I understand. And above me to my left, a man that, again, for people who know BattleTech, you know this guy, a New York Times best-selling author, Mr. Blaine Pardoe, a man with credits ranging from science fiction, gaming source books, true crime, political thrillers, history, you name it. Together, they are the backbone of creative juggernaut and the creators of Land and Sea, one of my current obsessions. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Well, I do enjoy doing good intros for cool people. So yeah, Land and Sea. I remember about last year, I did the review after the first trilogy of books came out, Splashdown, Riptides, and what was the last
Storm
one?
Surge.
Storm Surge. Thank you very much. That's the cool one with the underwater mechs. And now, since then, we've had Flotsam of War, which has been released, the short story collection. Ratchet's Run, which is a cool kind of Kelly's Heroes-inspired side story of sorts, and the follow-up, continuing the main saga, Tides of Redemption, featuring the return of Miss Natalia Falco, as well as the other recurring characters, and a shit ton of mean-spirited, evil as hell underwater aliens that really deserve a good, well, they deserve to get blown to hell, frankly, for all the crap they've been pulling on the human race. Gentlemen, first off, thank you for creating something, nice, fresh, and new in this day and age. So, kudos for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, when I said it was my current obsessions, I'm not kidding. When I like something, I tend to, splurge on it quite a bit. I've read them all so far. So,
that's fantastic.
What makes the series work on a lot of respects is it doesn't follow any of the usual alien invasion tropes.
Yeah.
Mankind doesn't unite together against the alien threat. There's no magic blow up the gun on the underbelly of the ship and the entire race is wiped out.
Until the inevitable sequel several years later, except for one actor who died in a test crash, apparently. But there's still Jeff Goldblum, so we're okay.
Yeah, but we dodge all of the usual tropes. Mm-hmm. And said, okay, so what would it be like if you have aliens invade from the ocean? What would that be like? And it's not, let's all kumbaya and unite against these bad guys. It's much like, our comic book guy who's doing our graphic novel said, the greatest threat is mankind.
Typically.
It's people screwing each other over. You read Ratchet's Run, which is it is a ripoff of Kelly's Heroes in many respects.
Never ever apologize for that. All great genres are created by ripoffs.
Never said I was sorry about it. I'm just acknowledging that it was inspired by Kelly's Heroes. But the fish don't do nearly the damage that the humans do.
Yeah.
Trying to screw each other over, and that is a theme that we have, and it carries on into the next trilogy that we're working on right now.
Yeah, the next book is called Cyclones of
Chaos.
Cyclones of Chaos. Yeah, that's a good title right there. So, for starters, how did you guys come up with the original idea for Land and Sea?
I was Brent.
That was me, yeah. So
hence the reason why it's Brent Evans Land and Sea on this title.
Yeah, behind the scenes, I'm an unusual gamer. I'm a gamer that really only plays one game. I just go so far down the rabbit hole and play it at a level that most people would never even consider, oh my gosh, you must be insane. Yeah, so I realized that when I get into something, I really get into it, and I do it for a very long time. I'm like, you know what? If I'm gonna do this again, I have reskinned and recreated. Let's start something new over and over and over again. And in time over your career, that kind of gets old, and you're like, you know what? I really want to do. I want to create something that's so awesome. I never want to leave it. And in order to do that, what are the parameters that would entail? How do we get the greatest, what we think of as a space scene? How do we get the greatest, land battles? How do we get, really, really rich character development? How do we make, characters accessible to everybody? How do we make this like all the way down to the gritty level of one of my core concepts was for you to play a scenario, your game, you can just go on Google Maps, print out a map of your neighborhood, and that's your game. You're fighting to, how would you actually defend your neighborhood? And that's a level of granularity that we never see in gaming, but you're like, that is so cool. Yeah, how would I? Because you know it like the back of your hand. You've got home field advantage. So yeah, so this was one of those things where my wild, crazy idea ran amok, and I came up with something cool, lightning in a bottle.
There you go. And in that case, how did you get involved, Blaine?
Well, Brent and I sat down at Gen Con, and we had talked about pulling together a company to do this, which was Creative Juggernaut. And Brent sat down, he goes, do you have any ideas for games? I said, yeah, I do. I actually have several universes I'd like to do. And he goes, let me tell you about mine. And he
I'll let you do yours first. You got all yours out, and then we did mine.
Yeah. Well, but honestly, it was like, and Brent really only had like, how about alien fish attacking, mankind? And I was like, okay, let's do that. That was literally the depth of the pitch. It was not his best pitch, okay? But I was like, okay, if we're going to do that, then we started talking about, well, so what are the elements that are going to make that work? So I said, let's make it near term. So it's, 20 years in the future, so that we don't have to completely craft a whole new world. The world's pretty much just like it is now. That makes it a little more easier for people to digest.
Mm-hmm.
I said, we got to have mecha of some sort. And we had a lot of discussion. Do you want the 3-story Battletech mecha? What do you want? And I was like, we started looking at DARPA reports and going, so where was the Army actually looking at employing that technology? It's more in the power armor side than it is the giant mecha. So it was like, let's make this so that the elements of this are a little bit more hard sci-fi as opposed to some of the other universes we've written in.
Yeah.
And honestly, from that point on, it just started rolling.
Yeah, it helps that we were starting there with like, okay, these are real world things, and they would release, here's what's making this not become a reality. Like it's battery technology, or it's fundamental actuators, like different nuances of things, and they would say, just here's why this won't work right now at the current technology
Which ended
level.
up becoming a plot point in the novels, actually.
Yeah, and it became something like, okay, so we're actually building on something realistic, and in the whole idea of being a near future sci-fi. Yeah, you put us out 20, 30 years. Then it's hand wavium is okay with, okay, well, reasonably, we actually could have solved some of those things. We just aren't there yet.
Yeah.
That's what made it feel more gritty.
Yeah. You get, something like, graphene capacitors or, carbon nanotube, materials and stuff like that, metamaterials that are more advanced than they are now without going full on into, the kind of stuff that makes a as you say, 3-story tall battle mech actually seem very plausible, which, people, one of the things that's always been, that have always been attracted to me about maybe smaller mechs is the fact that they are somewhat more plausible in that sense, like going up to maybe like 6 meters tall with your heavy gear front mission kind of, sizes, but also because they're also a hell of a lot easier to maintain when you think about it, like, going on a major offensive like that. Something the size of something the size of a building is going to require a building's worth of maintenance and techs to keep it running.
Yeah, well, we also got coming back to the fact that we wanted ours to be able to go into buildings. Like they had to be able to support people. Yeah, and so they had to fit within human structures. And that right off the bat changes your scale. Yeah. But what it allowed us to do is to increase the scale of the people at it, which is something where other game lines have traditionally, like the big giant mecha thing is awesome until you realize
have little infantry
miniatures. You're like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it puts it in line with something like Armor Trooper Votoms and stuff like that, in terms of like, anime reference and things like that, where very much those are the midpoint between infantry and armor, basically, in terms of their role on the battlefield.
Yeah, well, they got the capability of knocking out a tank, which you get into an urban area, power armor is going to be much more easy to maneuver and get down narrow alleys and strike from rooftops and from within buildings, etc., than trying to deploy another tank into the combat space.
Exactly. Yeah, it gives you so much more flexibility.
Mm-hmm. Deal with the harsh terrain, mountainous terrain is another example.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And of course, then you have, the enemy, which is extremely variable in its configurations and, its, capabilities in terms of also dealing with that same terrain. I mean, holy crap, some of the stuff you've got those aliens doing to people and the ambushes they're capable of pulling off is pretty nasty as hell. Oh,
So here's your
our
soldier,
yeah.
and here's the crab.
Oh, yeah, no
See the
wonder
problem?
small arms have a problem getting through that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but we actually, the game kind of takes that into account too.
Mm.
So we built some mechanics. Eric Crew, who's doing our game for Creative Juggernaut, has really built into the game to capture the essence and feel of what's in the novels. So even in our graphic novel, we have an image where an Asher rig has its arm being ripped off. So Brent and I had to sit down and go, so what would we need to roll for that to happen in the game? And it's like, okay, it's doable as long as, but it's a freak roll to be able to hit that, that kind of roll. But
roll
is
for
it
grapple,
doable?
then roll for damage, and then see if you get the right crit to pull off the whole thing.
Yeah, we've
Then
really
check
got
to see
a
if
nice
the pilot's
system.
arm went with it.
Yeah, thankfully
because the arm's in the
pilot's arm is
cockpit.
not in it, but yeah. But that's actually one of those pages that's on the splash for the Indiegogo campaign to promote it, is that initial scene where the creatures come right out of the sea, grab the Asher, rip its arm off, and you're like, okay, that's not what I was expecting. That
Land and Sea Paradise being done with Sean McCullough is my understanding.
Scott McCullough,
Scott.
Yeah, Scott McCullough. Thank you very much. Yeah, doing the graphic novel for this. I mean, congratulations on going multimedia for starters in this regard. I mean, already, how long have you been working on Land and Sea to get to this point?
I don't want to tell you.
6 years? 7?
Technically 12.
I mean, we started a long time ago, and we had the first 3 novels done.
Yeah. I was impressed with how quickly you were turning those out.
Well, the first 3 were done and in the box and ready to launch. We were going to do them as Kickstarters, and then after my less than gracious departure from BattleTech, we decided, we got approached by a lot of different publishers. I did, going, hey, we'll take you in, and we decided to go with Wargate because culturally they fit us best, and
they did a lot of military sci-fi as well.
It was a great fit. Their audiobook capability, man, Blaine, for me, it was still their audiobook capability was something so far beyond anything we could possibly
I've listened to the audiobooks. The one for Tides of Redemption I like especially because they had the 2 different narrators based on whether you're on the American side or the British side of the of the events. That was a good touch right there.
Well,
that's the same guy.
That's the same guy.
Holy crap. I couldn't even tell. That was great.
The best part of that whole narration was when I made him sing the song that the British did. That was in Storm Surge, that I made him sing that song when they were talking in London. He's a phenomenal narrator. We did have a male-female in Flotsam of War because certain stories were told from female perspectives. So.
Yeah. And that's also something I like a lot about Land and Sea so far. All the different perspectives to them. You have your main characters, obviously, the different, chapter, each chapter has often a different character, but you also have these cycles in between, the chunks of chapters, which are just one-shots, almost short stories intersected in the novels that give completely different perspectives coming from, civilians, other governments, militaries, private organizations, J-Tech, those bastards, and all these guys.
Well, it's fun. We're trying to build a very large ensemble of characters to play with, and you'll see that in the next trilogy. There's some of the old characters are in there, but there's some new characters in there. Yeah, and it's done with a deliberate purpose because we're trying to build up this, repertoire of characters that we can combine together, that we can bring together in different ways. They can interact with each other. That makes things really cool. I mean, if you think, and I've used this example many times, if you watch Game of Thrones, some of the best stuff was when they took characters you normally wouldn't expect together and put them together. You got great dialogue out of it. You got Jaime and Brienne of Tarth, traveling together. 2 characters.
Charles Dance and Maisie Williams together.
I mean, it was just, it was like, the Hound, and Ariana. These are not characters you'd expect together, but when you put them together, you got some really great results, at least on the screen.
Yeah.
We're just writing it in novel form.
I mean, who knows?
One of the other cool things
next.
that we did, like those little snippets through the first trilogy, like the chapter openers where you just see, like a page and a half from a character's perspective that gives the reader another piece. That was all part of this idea we had in gaming. There's this thing called the fog of war. And if anybody's ever played Zelda, you know what it is. You walk into a cavern and you can only see a little bit around you. And then the more you go, the more you learn in your opening. So we wanted that sense within in fiction, how do you create fog of war? And we realized it was through letting the reader see a much bigger combination of bits of the puzzle than the characters are. So the reader can put the picture together in their mind before the characters do, so that when the characters start realizing, the reader's like, oh snap, yeah, he's starting to get it. And that was that kind of like that getting people to build feeling the suspense. And it totally worked. I can't believe how well Blaine pulled it off. It was awesome.
Well, one of the things that's really good about that particular method is the fact that you're not actually spoon-feeding foreshadowing to the reader in that case. It's still fragmented among different perspectives and different events. It's only afterwards, as you say, when the characters actually it dawns on them that you can look back, and then if you've been paying attention, take those individual pieces and put them together to form a more clearer picture, possibly even clearer than what the main character even then could still see. But you're getting that additional, your brain not know what's happening. You may not know what's happening, but your brain does, as they say.
Well, and for people who follow the series, people are always like, which are the core novels? I'm like, they all are. So you get to Chaos, we've got the tankers are going to be there from Flotsam of War, and they're main characters now in this. You've got the pilot from Tides of Redemption that shot down the alien ship.
That was cool.
She's got her own arc in this story, so it's like I always tell people there are no little stories in this. It's each book kind of advances the universe and your understanding of the aliens in very different ways. And as you make that progression, you're going to see where those things kind of fit together.
Yeah. And I must say, you're doing a good job of so far showing what the aliens are doing, but not making necessarily clear why they're doing it or how they're doing it in many ways. Like reading through Tides of Redemption, the last one I read, it's like, okay, their ships aren't ships. Their ships are aliens. Incidentally, spoilers for all the books. I don't give a shit. I read them all. I love them. Go read them. Fuck you.
It's been out a while, okay?
Yeah, it's been out for 6 months.
You've got time. I was in a plane for 5 hours. I had time to read. But yeah, the fact that these things, not only are they actual huge trilobite-shaped spacecraft with force fields that keep the snow from melting on them, but also they are apparently some kind of psionic because they give people headaches whenever they're inside their brains, which is an interesting concept. Like you're walking into something's central nervous system has got to be trippy as hell. Now, it also seem to have their own biological nuclear reactors, which even the characters in the book are completely mystified by. But luckily, they're not. They're still vulnerable to thermobarics, so that's good.
Well,
good old British know-how.
A Marine in the room that's like, we need to just stop thinking that these rules that we think are rules actually apply to the aliens, because obviously they don't.
I'm not even sure they are the aliens. To be honest, I'm not sure we're not there. The characters aren't even dealing with actual aliens rather than the Roombas, biological killer Roombas sent by the actual aliens, from millions of light years away. Just go deal with this planet over here. I'm busy.
That is actually a remarkably interesting insight.
I mean, it comes from having read, if you've read the novelization for the second Crisis game written by Peter Watts, that's actually a plot point. Peter Watts is a Canadian science fiction author. He did Blind Sight and the Rifters trilogies. A cool dude out of Toronto. Survived flesh-eating bacteria on his leg.
Ugh.
Yeah. I saw him at a convention. He showed off the scar. It was nasty.
That's gnarly.
Yeah. Hardcore dude. But yeah, one character in the book mentions, you think we're fighting alien soldiers. We're not. We're fighting the gardening equipment. The aliens are so advanced that everything they create, all their basic robots, their toasters, are intelligent creatures. because they're that advanced. We're not fighting, alien combat drones. We're fighting like the garden shears that are automated, coming out out of storage to get rid of some pests that have, infected their garden, which is us.
Yeah. Well, we've got some definite plans for the aliens and some surprises along the way.
Yeah.
The next trilogy will fill in a few more gaps, but it's gonna every time we fill a gap, we're making sure we get now there are new questions that need to be answered type thing.
Yeah. And the
Yeah,
same thing
every
goes
one of those little story things that he drops, we always think of them, those are seeds for future stories. We're just throwing down new seeds. We really wanted to create a rich playground so that other authors and us could continue to just stomp amok, create really cool stories, use this as a playground for great storytelling, and make it fun.
Well, the fact that you have your main focus here on naturally the American, military and the related, personnel and such, as well as different militias and civilians attached to that, but you also have the entire world's militaries currently suffering the onslaught of all these. We've seen the British, as we mentioned, the Japanese have mentioned, the Russians who tried to nuke the fish and they got nuked right back.
Yeah,
which is okay, don't do that anymore.
Well, I love the questions like people are still like, where'd they get the nuke? How did they get it? Like, where did the nuke come from? They have the nukes of their own. I mean, so many great questions where you think it's going to get the answers are just going to be answers. No, the answers open up way more questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, where are they making all these different creatures and where are they getting the biological materials from them? And why do they all look like sea life that we would recognize as sea life? Like, are they, basing their stuff on our kind of, ocean's ecology, or, are this wherever they're from similar enough to our oceans to have similar kind of, baseline stuff? I mean, what the hell's going on with that? And, where are they from? Why are they here? All these questions still remain unknown, and even some of their tactics seem weird to humans. But claws claws, water cut, super electromagnetically propulsed water cutters, and gamma ray burst weapons don't really discriminate in that regard. I mean, holy shit, those things are nasty.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well,
what happens to Dana Blaze is just like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Well, but what's really interesting is you're dealing with a race that biologically engineers its soldiers and its weapons, and they are biologically based. We are technology based as a creature. So this is there's a very classic showdown taking place between the biological versus the mechanical.
Yeah. Which allows also for a great deal of asymmetrical kind of, gaming between two different factions that are very different in their approaches to, what kind of resources they need and what kind of tactics they would use to get the best out of their particular version of technology.
Well, what you get with Tides of Redemption, too, is the first time you see that the aliens are fighting themselves.
That was a question.
So they're not this unified force that's out to wipe out mankind. It's not Independence Day. We don't know how many have actually invaded at this point. Brent and I have a pretty good idea, but but you don't know how many colonies you may be dealing with and what their alliance structure may be.
Yeah.
Honestly, that moment, where the soldiers are in the battlefield and they see the creatures come out of the ship and run right past them to go attack one of the other aliens, like, okay, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do with this. Like, what's to happen here? I love that. That's exactly what would
just
happen.
Go with the Godzilla answer. Let them fight.
Yeah, get out of the way.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, here's a question for you. How
they're making a mistake?
Yeah. Well, here's a question for you. How far ahead do you guys have all this stuff planned? And how far ahead can you have all this stuff planned when you have all these different, plates in the air, like gaming and, comic book and all this stuff? How much of the actual, world building and storyline do you guys have to have planned beforehand before you could actually go ahead with any of these projects?
I tend to think of them in terms of seasons, which are, a year of the war type thing. And I would say we're probably a couple of years out where if I had to sit down and write it all down, I could. Here's how the war is going to progress. But there are surprises. Brent gets surprised when he gets the novels because it's like I didn't know that was happening, or whatever.
Well, and Blaine gets surprised when I send feedback. So
there you go.
So
I think that's a
there's
hallmark of a good partnership.
you're not gonna. To Brent's point earlier, we're not trying to end this war because then there's no game product, there's no video games, there's what's the point in the comic books if you know the end? So this is an ongoing conflict. It's going to last for a long, long time.
It can last for a long time, but there's also the aftermath. Like what comes after, even if the fish are defeated, humanity is going to be forever changed by this. You have all this alien technology lying around, new technologies that were built, new alliances formed. I mean, even after the aliens have gone, you still got a whole bunch of potential for storytelling and gaming and generalized mayhem just from humans, you building up on all this stuff and going at each other's throats.
Oh yeah, there's going to be a lot of fun with this. And you get to see some of the minor characters come back. I thought it was great bringing Fizz back into this.
Yeah.
With Veronica. And Veronica was this character who shows up in like 2 chapters in Splashdown.
Yeah.
Now she's a player, and
it's interesting seeing her. When reading her stuff in Tides of Redemption, it was interesting because at first when you mentioned her, her first appearance in Splashdown, she's basically like she's Dana Blaze light. She's trying to be that, but can't quite make it because Dana's already in that position and knows how to keep her top of the pyramid spot. But then she dies. Fitz goes into hiding for a bit, and then Veronica sees that opportunity to rise to the top. And then you see the events of Tides of Redemption, and she's like, "No, I don't want this. I'm going to take a step back. I don't want to end up like her. I don't want to."
Yeah, and this is where I die. She actually says, "Oh, this is where I die. Like, this is it."
Yeah. And she's actually, nice to Fitz, which is compared to Dana put the guy through.
Yeah, well, but it makes for an interesting because characters grow. She got taken down pretty bad by Dana. That's a life-altering event. I mean, so she's grown through that.
And I like the way Fitz. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I like the way Fitz grew, where it wasn't like he got off one hobby horse and jumped right on the next one. No, he's like he had to deal with the emotions of literally this thing. We faced the apocalypse, and my partner died right in front of me in a horrific way. I broadcast that thing and I sold it, and then we made a hideous enemy in the way, and I need to go hide. I thought the whole him like bailing and hiding for months. That's completely realistic. I would just believe it if he hadn't.
Yeah.
So I love that degree of these characters aren't perfect.
Yeah.
They're human.
I just like he named his dog after Dana too.
Yeah.
It's just because that's what we would do. Is human.
Exactly. It's his way of, honoring her and grieving for her. And also there's the fact that in many ways he missed it. He missed it out there. And he has to admit that to himself as well. I mean, there's a lot of, there's that ambivalence to conflict in many ways where it's a horrifying thing, but it also gets your blood pumping in ways that nothing else will.
Yeah.
And, a lot, people, war correspondents, people who work, like do, humanitarian work in war zones and soldiers themselves. I mean, a lot of them will admit it's a very ambivalent kind of feeling being out there doing their jobs.
Yeah, it's fun. He's a great character to play with, and it's not a huge character in the story, but he's an important one that ties all of these things together. And it's again that capability to take individual characters and bring them together that you might not normally expect and go, so how would that happen? And what does that play out like?
Yeah,
he's also a great way. He's a great mechanism for the writer to tell cool stories and perspectives on things that no other character could do it. Like just through the eyes of the character. Like, he was so unique. He allowed Blaine to do things you couldn't do with anybody else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's, one of the reasons why you want all these, different characters and all these different perspectives, even on the same, like one thing I mentioned during my review of the first 3 books is that sometimes you get similar events being seen from different perspectives by different characters, like the introduction of those jumping turtle alien APC creatures. Those got mentioned a couple of times in one of the books. And, in each case, it's like, okay, you got a different perspective on these things and what they're capable, a little bit more of what they're capable of from a different angle. And, the people reacting to them. Or like when the Cthulhu's, those kaiju-sized motherfuckers just come out. And how each of them are also built differently. Like
Totally different.
Yeah, some of them are
Totally
more
unique.
reptilian, others have weird tentacle faces, crab-like, and it's just like they all have the same function, but it looks like they're just assembled from different parts, which is a nice kind of function right there.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Cyclones of Chaos is great too because I get to destroy downtown Manhattan, and
As one does.
it's always been a lifelong dream of mine to do that.
I mean, you already fucked up LA to a point of irreparability, so.
I think LA is redeemable in some respects, but
You almost got the Pentagon, but Adam Kane managed to stop you.
Yeah, wait till you see Seattle.
Kane is back as Kane.
Yeah.
And that was something that that was the first tenet I had of the new trilogy was this has to be Kane's story because we ended Tides of Redemption with Kane and Falto together.
Yeah. Slaves
two characters you'd never picture together. And
they were literally on opposite sides of the world when this happened.
One of them down at the bottom of the ocean for a large portion of it.
Yeah.
Well, and I just like it because he's like, hey, you're just a crayon eater. And she's like, shut up, Grandpa. And it's like, boom,
I'm gonna like
that's it. These characters are going to just be a lot of fun together.
Yeah.
And they are. They're just, they're just very different. So we're going to get to see some really cool stuff.
Yeah. And also the fact that Slade, the guy who discovered the aliens in the first place here, the guy with the Defense Intelligence Agency who's in charge of this whole, alien task force, is assembling a multidisciplinary joint operation force under his command. So you can have people from all sides of this thing: Marines, Space Force, Army, intelligence, civilians who can help out with this thing. I mean, who knows? Maybe he'll get, attaches from other governments if it ever becomes, a truly international thing. I mean, it's freaking XCOM, only without all the, skullduggery and stuff like that. Incidentally, either of you guys ever play XCOM Terror from the Deep? Because seriously, I'll have to ask about that.
I think I did at one point. I mean, but God, that was like the 80s, right?
80s or early 90s, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I may have played it once. It wasn't much of an inspiration for me for this, though. I mean, we're a little more high res.
True. Although, admittedly, if you ever decide to do a video game based on this stuff, that's a good place to get some inspiration because it's basically XCOM, but the aliens are coming from underwater. So, easy peasy right there.
I'll let Brent talk to that.
Yeah.
Do tell.
At a later time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we got a tabletop game to talk about first. So, how advanced is that?
Before the tabletop game, we've also got a graphic novel.
Of course, this is true. Land and Sea Paradise.
Has been so fun. We actually, this has been about a year later than we'd expected. But that's because Scott McCullough, who's leading the thing, he actually does have a job where he's saving babies and making an impact in people's lives and doing things that are important. So we're like, okay, well, I'm not going to bust your hump over the over a delay on the deadline. Well,
there you go.
Let's do it as we go.
Priorities.
But, yeah, he's been so good to work with. The illustrator Doug has just been fantastic. We did a lot of character development work on the behind the scenes while things were spinning up and stuff. And it's just been so excited to see this chapter. This thing, we knew one of the first shots fired happened in Hawaii, and then all of Hawaii goes dark. And we only barely mention it, other than nobody knows what's happening in Hawaii in the fiction.
Yeah. In the actual book, the events are just in the book, the events are specifically on Guam, which is where Natalia Falco gets taken and all that stuff goes down. But yeah, Hawaii goes dark, and also I think Greenland or Iceland also went to completely black.
Iceland.
Yeah. So there's another opportunity. Yeah. So you have a lot of opportunities for stuff like this where you can go back to explore aspects of the universe that were just briefly mentioned and just go hog wild with those, or allow other authors to go in there to do it for you.
And a big part of that was that we knew that there were certain stories that we wanted to tell with Hawaii. And comic books are such a rich medium to tell them with. Man, we could really make this amazing if we do it for comics. So doing a graphic novel series was just perfect. Okay, Blaine, you take it.
No, it's perfect. You hit the nail on the head. There's, we had set this up for a future slot, and we're talking with other writers. I've got another writer that we're going to be bringing in to do a novel, and he's picked a city we've barely mentioned. I think it's mentioned once, and he was he came in with some really interesting ideas. I mean, just stuff we hadn't considered, and It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun. I mean, it's just going to be an intriguing romp.
Yeah. It's interesting because you both guys came from, BattleTech writing and creating for an existing IP going back, decades with originally with FASA. Now you're creating your own and you're providing now the baseline for other authors to contribute to. How much leeway do you guys give to, these new authors compared to the kind of leeway you guys had with, other IPs?
Well, I've met with this author, Declan Finn. We've met physically once, and we've had several long communications and sent the outline back and forth between us with ideas and stuff. There's a lot there because it's our IP. It's got to, whatever he writes has to fit in our universe and be part of the canon going forward. So he's doing some pretty spectacular stuff, but it's in a certain area, and it's going to be an intriguing twist on things.
Exactly. Yeah. Getting that not only different perspective from characters, but from the authors themselves, the person writing it.
Yeah.
One of the tricks with it was we always want to make sure that when we are telling the stories and we're bringing other authors to tell stories within specific things, it has to be respectful to the source of what it's supposed to be. I know in others, there's been times where this is the villain faction, this is the hero faction, this is the thing. And they kind of got, put in little boxes.
Yeah.
Well, when you're talking about something that's a near future sci-fi that all with real people and real places and real organizations and things, people care.
Yeah.
You can't be disrespectful with it. You gotta be real. You gotta be honest and do it right in a way that people that are in there feel, I can get it.
That's one thing I liked about Tides of Redemption. Both the American, the leader of Omega Force, and the British guy, the leader of the Royal Marine Commandos, had their problems with the opposite nation,
right?
Dealing back not just to the backstory of this universe, but also ours. The British Commando guy had lost family during the Afghan and Iraq wars, and he's freaking weapons of mass destruction, you bollocks bastards, and meanwhile, the American guy's you guys backed out on us and left us to fight the Russians all on our own, and he's like, how would we help you guys? You guys have, poked the bear over there. It's on you. And that's, I'm sorry for that. I had to.
No, it's good. Because that's exactly who the characters are. And it's exactly how the nations are.
Yeah. Speaking of, that's kind of stuff, how closely do you guys have to follow the current geopolitical fuck-ups in the world just to make sure you're not getting accidentally painted into a corner by a
lot of them we try to skip over because we want to be 20 years, we want it to feel authentic but not have to carry all the baggage that comes with that stuff. 20 years is a long time in politics.
Although I have to, you gotta admit, when the current Eastern European chaos started breaking out, you gotta wonder, okay, people are gonna think we predicted some shit here.
I have a knack for that in my other series, Blue Dawn. That's where I do that. And I've caught quite a bit of stuff in it that turned out to be true. But with this universe, we really don't play very much with the political, other than the politics of how human beings interact with each other.
Yeah, which ultimately, post dates much better than trend du jour.
Yeah, I think it'd be foolish for us to think all these social issues and stuff that everybody thinks are so important now are going to be a big deal in 20 years. Yeah, it's just, I think it's irrelevant, and so let's not dwell on that stuff. Pardon?
Especially in the face of an alien invasion.
Right. So we just don't go there. It's just not, this series it's political in that it's geopolitical, but it's not political in any other way.
Yeah, which is something I appreciate about it.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure, especially when you're in the military is always overshadowed, I guess would be the right word, with a flavor of political nuance, because the ebbs and flows within the way elections go can have a dramatic impact on the way the soldiers fight a war.
Exactly, yeah.
So we try to allow for that, but the truth is, in universe, we're only really a year and a half, not quite 2 years in. We haven't gone through two election cycles. There's a lot of stuff that we're still really young on this stuff. A lot of the stuff the authors are going to determine how these things grow, evolve, and change.
Yeah, how
And
does
we'll
a
have to see
civilian
how that
government
happens
react to?
organically.
Yeah, like how does the civilian government of the United States react to this stuff? Will there even be elections in the midst of a global, extraterrestrial war? I mean, is
Not
that
just
something you can afford to have? Is that something, and if you do, I mean, how does that affect your warfighting capability?
Well, it changes the whole American political dynamic because tens of millions of people have migrated from California and the coastal cities and gone to the interior.
Mhm.
So you're dealing with Wyoming. If you do a census now, Wyoming is more politically impactful than California.
And far more, diverse in terms of their politics because all the people
Yeah.
from all these different areas migrated there, not just, one particular party.
Yeah,
Yeah, and there's
Iowa, Wyoming, Nevada, those places are all going to be very much political powerhouses, as opposed to the coastal states.
Mm.
And there's an added element to this too. One of the things, like when we talk about overarching from the beginning, like the primary people that are hungry don't tend to behave nicely. And if you look at 70% of the food chain, like where people get supply of food, goes through water or coastal cities.
Oh dear.
You have now just dramatically interrupted the way people get food across the globe. And when people get hungry, politicians fall.
Amateurs study tactics, professionals study logistics.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh man. This is
Yeah, I mean, really think about the human race currently today. If the food sources from the sea were completely cut off.
Oh God.
It changes everything. So that's what our characters and their world is facing. They're dramatically different. You've now lost your homes and you've lost food.
Yeah. The only things
you get that.
have
We have food riots going on in Manhattan.
Yeah.
In the next book. I mean, it's like the people are, and you've got foraging parties going into these abandoned apartments looking for food that hasn't spoiled.
Yeah.
Just to keep the population alive that's still in the city. Because no matter how bad things are, there's always some idiots who just stay.
Yeah. Or, you have some idiots like those guys in Ratchets Run, those weird cultist guys.
Right.
They're going to try to appease the nature spirits that come from the sea to punish humanity for our pollution. It's like, and the militia they come across is like, dude, what the hell are you talking about? No, we're not letting you through here.
I so wanted to let them through. You just go. We'll just film it. Well, you go ahead. I so like that was the what I want these people to die. Let them go. Come on.
No, but that's if you're in California, you're going to have some alien supporting cults.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, anywhere really. I mean, crazy is a universal human characteristic. It doesn't matter where you are. You're gonna have somebody who's gonna try to, tell ET to go home without packing the firepower to make him do it.
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed the movie Independence Day, where all the people went to the tops of the building,
the sides, and the lady just looks up. It's like, wow, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, bring Elvis back. And I'm like, oh, you know what? That would totally happen. That would totally happen.
Yeah.
Oh,
we knew they were going to die. It was just a question of how spectacular was it going to be.
Yeah. I got to admit, that was emotionally exciting. That total emotional payoff when that building went down and exploded.
Yeah, it's like the moment you see them, you're like, oh, these guys are fucked.
I know, right?
Well, that, and when the reporter says, stop firing your guns at the alien spacecraft. And it's like, yeah, I could totally see that too.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Independence Day is a fun movie. It's stupid in many ways, but it is a fun movie.
Yeah, it was a great midsummer popcorn.
Yeah.
Thriller. I loved that. I thought it was great for what it was. I could suspend disbelief on all the corniness. I was good.
Yeah. I could even make it work with the whole, flies up into the beam and, destroys it, because the thing was about to fire, so its capacitors are at full capacity.
Yeah.
And then he just flies straight into them and the chain reaction just destroys it. Yeah. I can go with that, honestly. It's fine. And that they had used the technology from that one spacecraft as the basis for computer systems and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So our technology is and they had used our satellites in order to communicate. So yeah, their technology is compatible. So, get something in there that stuxnets up their shit, and there you go. You're good to go. So really, no, it's not a stupid movie. It is Roland Emmerich is the Shakespeare of our time.
Oh, I don't know.
I think we may have reached on that one.
The guy who did a movie about how Shakespeare isn't Shakespeare is the Shakespeare of our time.
I just I can never accept the fact that a ship that never had power got power and a pilot climbed in it and could fly it. Because the implication is pilots can just fly anything. And it's like,
that Will Smith.
Is so not true.
Well, once he took the sticky note and turned it upside down, then
there you go. Yeah. See, I mean, it's Will Smith.
Yeah.
It's 90s Will Smith. He could fly anything. He can operate a giant steampunk spider mech. He can operate a flying saucer. No problem.
That is true.
Oh, man. So, yeah, you have all this stuff happening, all this, logistical, nightmare happening. There's, food shortages. There's political shenanigans. And also you have the human backstabbing, as you mentioned. In the third book, it ends with, Jay Drake, the, techno, mogul, hightailing it to China after all his assets have been seized by the U.S. and they discover just how corrupt and, how much of a Lex Luthor-ish asshole he's been. And, now in the latest book, his agents, are starting to re-infiltrate and trying, still getting him and stuff. And of course, you got the head of the CIA being a dick and trying to get to undermine the DIA in order to get all this power and influence back under their umbrella,
which all felt true to the characters.
Yeah,
all of those. Yeah, every one of those things. Like what for the characters? Yeah, that completely seems like what they would do.
Yeah, and also you have there was a senator also who was being a complete asshole to slave.
Yeah, he was an asshole from the beginning. He never
exactly.
Stopped.
Yeah, well, he was a senator. I mean, I'm from Canada, and I can tell you, politicians are the same everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, the political backstabbing between the CIA and the ETF is a major theme that you will see play out in this next trilogy.
Nice.
Yeah. Season 2.
Nice. Because that's also, something I enjoyed quite a bit is that, as you mentioned, humanity is not entirely united on this. You have, the breakup of international alliances. The planet is more multipolar than having the United States as a single hegemon because of the, Rosu-Bratva War and White Monday, the cyber attack that fucked up the internet for quite some time there. Which, how much, like when you go to, I know that there's going to be a, story taking place in that background in Iron Age Magazine #4 coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm assuming you also have plans to really, investigating that stuff too, not just, going forward with the alien war against the aliens, but also seeing how much of the, how we got to this point too.
The fans are clamoring for more from the Russia-Bratva War. We did a short story for Anvil 4 on it. I want to at some point write a trilogy about the war, and I know exactly what I want to do with it, but I'm worried that's going to be a big distraction from land and sea. If because then you're going to have everybody going, well, I don't want the aliens. I want now the Russians. Yeah. And, you split your fan base.
Yeah.
Kind of down the middle there about where they want stuff. Of course, you're going to have a group in the middle of that Venn diagram. And they're just like, I want it all. Which is fine, but I want to be careful. We do it at the right time.
Yeah.
Which, give the people the backstory stuff at the appropriate time. And I know exactly what I want to do with it. I mean,
nice.
I know how it's going to play out, and I know the approach to it and everything else, and the characters that are going to be in that, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's been really cool because I've worked alongside Blaine for a very long time. And watching one of the things that we've been able to do with a degree of flexibility we've never had before with Land and Sea is listen to the fans. And Blaine's very actively watching what the fans are looking for, what they're asking for, where they like the reaction. Like when we put out the first book, and obviously 2 and 3 followed very, very quickly. but we weren't quite sure which characters were going to be the fan favorites. What were we going to do? Was Cece going to be well loved, or was she going to be the Wesley Crusher character that everybody loved to hate? Like a lot of the characters across the board. Were people going to like Jay Drake? Were they going to like our reporter? Like all that across the board. But it was really interesting how much the fans loved Kane. I mean, right from the beginning, this guy is the crotchety uncle that gets along with nobody, and yet everybody seemed to just dig this guy. And it was so fun for Blaine to watch. Blaine's like, fans are really liking Kane. I could really run amok with do some cool things with Kane. Yeah. And he just going with some of those characters and stuff, and him listening to the fans. And one of the things we got from the fans was a desire for those the Russo Bravo War stories, and his idea of the very first time that the Lion steps onto a battlefield, like it comes through the trees, it emerges for the first time. The Russians have that moment of, what's that? Like, that's that moment we got to catch.
Fucking A.
Yeah.
It's also the core thing that I really wanted to do is around the Immortal 12, the original 12 godlike Asher pilots that went out there. And if you go to any military base, like I spent time at Best Ranger competition, you walk into the Ranger room, there are busts of the soldiers who have come before you, who were not necessarily the generals. These were guys who just were exceptional hero, goddamn American heroes, And I was like, the original 12 pilots who went into action, their stories are almost a separate thing. And that's what this is in Anvil. It's one of the first of the Immortal 12.
Nice.
So he's piloting Lion serial number 5. That's what he's taken into battle.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. And it's the first time ever the American Army's fielding Oshers against Russian Oshers, So
that moment on the
that's
cover
gonna
of
be
Anvil,
something right there.
that is the moment of the Lion stepping out of the trees and opening fire. That's what I'm like. That's what we need. Like, we need that thing.
Badass.
Yeah.
Plus, it's like, as you say, it's the first time they've ever fought each other. These two armies, powered armor suits, have ever been in combat with each other. So you have to wonder, like, do they even know what they're up against yet? And then they're going to find out really fucking quick.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be fun. And I'm going to introduce the rest of the stories of the Immortal 12. That'll probably at some point be an anthology or a compilation of stories. But the first one we're doing in Anvil. And I don't know where, one of them will probably go up in my blog. One will probably go somewhere else. They're all going to be seated in different places. And at some point we'll pull them all together into a book and give, some more additional background and stuff. But it's kind of fun to do that.
Yeah. One thing that would be really cool, it's probably, way early for that, but some kind of like, technical readout manual or something like that gives like,
we're looking forward to that.
Yeah. Cause that's not just for that, but also like, you could have like half of it being all about the technology, the Ashers and, all the, different of the different nations and stuff like that. The drones that the people using those, dog-like, kind of combat drones. The Japanese had a whole bunch of those kinds of things. But also in the other half of the book, confidential leaked reports from DIA alien autopsies about.
I look forward to the time we get to that stage. That'll be excellent.
Yeah, that'd be kind of fun in and of itself. For a guy who's an XCOM fan like me, always getting to those alien dissection bits is always yeah. All right, let's see what makes you tick.
I love that he went for the military briefing because that's exactly what we're planning to do.
Yeah, exactly. And for a mech enthusiast like me, we love all these little things like what a lot of people consider like in gaming, the stuff that's fluff, like miles per hour, armor thickness, horsepower, all the stuff that doesn't really translate necessarily to game mechanics, but it's there that fires up the imagination and gives context to everything like that.
Yeah, we've got some plans on both fronts. Let's put it that way.
Nice.
And one of those plans is much further along than the other. So there's going to be something for the fans, and I'm hoping it'll be in the next couple of months, honestly.
Oh, I'm liking that.
Yeah, it'll be cool. It was funny because obviously working, previous games, back in the old days of the technical readouts, we'd crank out 100, illustrations in 3-4 months or whatever, and you're just powering stuff out. You don't have the time to really think about polishing. And it only had to look good in one, from one angle that you made the illustration to just send that off.
Yeah. I've seen some of the very early technical illustrations for Battletech Mechs, and there's like,
Yeah, that couldn't possibly work.
Yeah, couldn't possibly work.
Yeah.
Or it looks like this would look great if it was on a black background, was drawn in green neon, so like it was like a weird kind of like digital representation from a MechWarrior 2 or something like that.
Yeah.
Then it could work. This looks like weird stick figure drawing thing, which kind of works
Well, yeah, in the 80s and
context.
90s, you could get away with that.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Yeah.
obviously, like when we, Blaine and I, when we overhauled BattleTech and got the update for things, like that whole process of building out the 3D modeler team, so we can build it so we can see it from every direction. Let's actually, like, you can actually look at it from above. So this is the view of this mech from the player at the table's eye view. Now you know whether it looks cool or not, and you can start tweaking and fine tuning and stuff. And so there's a lot of that. And like Blaine and I are both really hard on every one of these designs has to look very signature. These cannot look like they're just derivative craft off of each other. No, they all have to be unique. They have to be distinct.
Which also has an important gameplay feature because you need your miniatures to look distinct enough so you know which one you're looking at a glance, so that you don't accidentally move the wrong thing when you're trying to play.
And honestly, we don't want to. There's a bunch of other mecha, properties out there. We don't want ours to look like anybody else's. We want people to look like, oh, that's clearly a land and sea one, because they recognize some cool feature about it.
Yeah, we go down to the point where you look at the cover of Flotsam of War. That's probably one of my favorite pictures, because we argued, like, when Brent will show me a design, I'll go, can the pilot see where his feet is? What can the pilot see to the sides, etc.? Because you can have these fancy designs, and for years I've written for BattleTech, and they don't necessarily measure up when you're dealing with, okay, but how could the pilot actually pilot in there? You can't.
How could they not step on their own guys?
Yeah, So we've watched a lot of that type of stuff, and you see that in that cover for Flotsam of War.
Yeah,
because you see that lower window.
Totally beautiful homage to that MechWarrior RPG cover right there.
Yeah.
Which chef's kiss right there.
Thank you. Yeah, Dan did an amazing job on that image.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all the artwork for Land and Sea has been great. I mean, just
it really has been.
Not just also not just the mechs themselves, seeing all their weapons firing and stuff like that, but also seeing the little details, like I think for Storm Surge, you have like the vague shadow of an alien in the background of the image, and the Trident attack submarine and everything like that, and the same thing for the other stuff as well. And of course,
like Ratchet's Run, you actually
that one, that great view, you have this, you have these infantry guys with their holographic displays and the Asher there, and then you have this horde of monsters coming out of the ruins of LA, and it's just like, oh yeah, prepare for war right there.
Well, and to tell you how accurate that is, that's actually from a picture I took in LA.
That's the advantage of using real world locations. You can just go location scout wherever you want.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually been really cool now that we're, the Paradise campaign has gone live, and the promo pages and the variant covers and stuff. We're getting to show a lot more nuances of things, because really so far everybody's only seen covers. And now you're actually getting to see a lot more interpretations on things, on how those images can come together, those scenes, the characters, soldiers. Like the idea of we had this concept of designing really, really cool wearable tech, because we want all of our soldiers in Land and Sea. They're part of a living, virtually augmented battle space.
Yeah.
And
I've seen a certain representation of that coming out of DARPA at certain points. What was it called? The Landmate? No, I forget the exact term, but there was the concept of having a fully networked squad, each one able to take in the information from all the other ones wirelessly like that.
Right.
Yeah. So I'll even take it all the way back to the movie Reign of Fire. When the soldiers show up and they drop the triangulating rods, and so they can actually see things in a 3D version, that adds such a dimension to any battlefield. Yeah. Especially from a command and control standpoint. But when you come down to the soldiers that are wearing the gear, they're not all going to have the best gear.
Yeah, especially not once the war starts going on.
Yeah, we had to realize, so if you look at the Ratchet's Run, they don't have the full face masks. They're not wearing rebreathers and stuff. They're like, okay, well these aren't the frontline Uber Ultra SEAL team. This is something else. Like this wasn't the Marines that we saw in Guam. This was something else. So like actually having to find ways to do like different degrees of hardware, and reinforce that in there, as those are obviously, when it comes to gameplay and the role play game and stuff, those are all going to be gear levels that people are able to purchase or use or whatnot in gameplay.
You have
but
your
just making
levels
sure
of,
our
you know,
imagery mimics that.
Yeah, you have your levels of like, you know, super elite, you know, special forces guys, regular soldiers on the, you know, support logistics in the backfield, and then you got the militias who are militias and maybe survivors, you know, just using whatever the hell they can get their hands on.
And then you've just got completely irregulars. You've got your street gangs. You've got your, you know, the old dude with a shotgun and a Molotov cocktail that doesn't want to leave his house. You got all of it. You know, you have to
private
make sure
security forces coming in for, you know, various organizations.
Yep.
All sorts of cool stuff like that.
It's a rich tapestry. It really is, because there's a lot we haven't gotten into yet that when we get into it, people are just gonna go, okay, this is really fun.
Yeah.
You know,
you got the same kind of thing coming from the aliens as well, as you said, to possibly different colonies, different, you know, tactics, different, you know, ways of equipping their soldiers, different soldiers, of course, because they're all genetically engineered from the bottom up, from the ground up to fulfill particular tasks.
Right.
So you can have like whole different armies of alien horrors coming out with completely different functions depending on, you know, which group you're dealing with.
And with those squids coming out of that ship and going right after the crabs, that adds such a new layer to what they're seeing.
I mean, octopi do enjoy cutting into crabs. That's for damn sure in real life. So everybody loves a good bit of seafood right there.
Yeah, but as we know from Flotsam of War, you really don't want to eat that stuff.
No, not without some serious Pepto right there.
One of our guys, Kevin, came up with that idea. He goes, "Yeah, you know, that would be a test of the new guys. They'd make them eat it." And I was like, "Okay, but we're going to do that, but it's going to give you explosive diarrhea."
Oh God.
I love
you're
that
eating.
They just count down the seconds. So like it's coming back.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about it, you're eating alien DNA. You know, your body is probably not going to process that.
Nope. Reminds me a bit of like Pacific Rim, when they go and send the guy over to get some stuff from the black market, and they've built a house out of the rib cage of one of these creatures, and they're taking it apart and taking the parasites and selling them off as, you know, aphrodisiacs and shit like that. There's bound to be people, even though the government has outlawed anybody touching this stuff, there's bound to be people not just selling it to corporations, but just like making home remedies out of this crap from, you know, the discarded corpses of alien crabs.
Yeah.
There's going to be people that are going to profit from this no matter what, because this is humanity.
Right. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, and like there's little nuances that we've dropped hints in there. There are certain bits of alien technology that will escape their control. For instance, in Flotsam of War, we have the ship that's going along, and all of a sudden they run into a reef that's never been there before. They're like, how can a reef grow 200 feet in a week? Reefs can't.
Yeah.
But if you really think about, if you are a deep sea creature, or and you're able to design, your technology is biology, then you would biologically design coral to grow in patterns of the buildings that you want them to be.
Exactly.
And
I mean, it makes for a really good building material.
Then they're going to end up wherever the tides take them, and we're going to get all kinds of weird stuff happening.
Well, you know, long term, it allows them to do things like manipulate the jet stream, and stuff like that, which can impact the weather. And you know, there's a lot of long term
cyclones of chaos.
Yeah. Just the beginning.
Well, there's a lot of chaos in that book. Let me tell you.
Good. I mean, already humanity's managed to reverse engineer. Well, JTech managed to reverse engineer and then sell to the Americans. The technology for that went into the special undersea ashers that they use in the third book,
Storm Surge.
Thank you. Which basically is like a layer of organic material that generates its own energy. Kind of like a biological battery, which is
actually what we do now. Like humans are making use of that technology now. They're building solar panels with algae.
Mm-hmm.
The algae are the ones generating the energy. So we actually that was another bit of those technologies. Like, how do we pull it off that would make sense?
Yeah,
and the real world supplied the answer.
Yeah, the real world supplied the answer, and J-Tech rose to the challenge
That's right.
like a bunch of assholes.
I actually like that Jay recognized everybody's going to get this. We just have to be first.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And it doesn't
There's
matter
more
what we
to
have to
Jay's
do to get
story
it.
than anybody knows at this point. I'm not going to ruin it, but he's a bigger prick than you guys ever imagined.
I look forward to seeing it. Yeah, going back a little bit, you mentioned, taking a lot of feedback from fans. This is something I think that creating a new IP nowadays is far different than where it was, like, say, when Battletech started up in the 80s and stuff like
absolutely.
that. Yeah.
So different.
Now you have direct access to your own fan base from the moment go. How does that, impact you in terms of, like, how you, not just, how you decide the events that are going into, but how you run your, company in the first place?
For me, I just read what they say. It's not a popularity vote,
Mhm.
And there are certain things that people want that aren't ready yet. So it's like it's coming, but it's coming when we need it to come. There's a point where that will happen, and you're going to be happy that it does. Yeah, you have to look at it very open-ended and don't take any of it personal. Don't take any of it, as a direction you have to go. But I like where they're speculating, where they're like, okay, they're salvaging metal. Why are they doing that?
Yeah.
What are they doing with it? What's
Why
the
are they
real
stealing
reason for it?
toasters?
And some of the stuff that we have very simple answers for, but it's like, we're not going to tell you because you don't know yet.
Yeah.
And
And maybe we never need to know. Some things
well,
maybe should remain mysterious.
that's it. And if you think about the series Lost, in many respects, you didn't know what was going on until the last episode.
Secret is they didn't know what was going on either.
Yeah,
I think the writers on that one just didn't know where they're going.
The mystery box is fine so long as you know what the mystery box contains. If you don't,
we want our authors to actually know the direction.
Yeah.
But yeah, Blaine was absolutely right. A lot of it is we do enjoy listening to the feedback, but the real guidance that we use is does their ideas inspire us? If somebody says something like, what, actually that could be really cool if, and then like, what would happen if, and then you just run with it, and like, where would it go, and see is that a cool, worthy story? Does the character does it seem believable for the character? So would that be authentic, or would it feel forced?
Yeah,
like all that little nuance of how would that impact gameplay and mechanics and comics and all the other things that are going on, so that these things can be working hand in hand.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and you have to look at the Russian war is a great example of this. Fans are all clamoring. Give us the Russians. We want to see the Russo-Bravo War. Well, if we stop what we're doing and go do that, then land and sea is no longer land and sea. It's land and sea, but it's really this Russian war thing. And that's kind of a limited conflict. And it's like, so how do you fill that need? So I'm using Anvil magazine to fill part of that need. So you have to listen to it, but apply some business acumen and common sense to how am I going to fill that need, but still be able to move forward with the IP.
Yeah, exactly. And
growing an IP from the ground up is a lot like a tree, where you need to make sure you have your trunk going up before you start sending your branches off in all the directions.
Yeah, I was going to ask, in terms of starting a new IP like this from the ground up, as you say, what now, obviously speaking from, American perspective, because that's where you're based and, stuff like that. But what does that entail for someone who would want to start their own thing, their own universe for IP that they can then, branch off, as you say, in different directions, whether it be in media or gaming or stuff like that? What are the requirements, you think, to really get started with that and have it prosper and grow?
Take your soul to a very humble place to begin with. Because if you're used to working on, decades old, well-established things, it's going to be a different thing. Yeah. And always keep it focused on, like, what would be how do we craft this so it's so cool that it's worthy when those fans find it? And that's where I find it healthy to start from.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to give them the basics. Took a lot of time to plan this stuff out before pencil was put to paper, before a single chapter was written. there was, what are the elements we want this universe to have that are going to make it distinct, different, and enjoyable and playable, and things people are going to want to engage with. So what do we need to have with that? And parts of it we fill in later down the road. We knew we had the Russia-Bravo War. It wasn't honestly until like 5 months ago that I sat down and said, okay, I'm going to write up what that war was. All of it, and here's a big document that says, here's what happened every month in that war. But we didn't have that up front, but we knew it was a major part of the background. And, we didn't want to write entire chapters explaining it, in the series. But at some point, all of this material will make its way into the hands of readers in one way or another.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is more a question, I think, for Blaine here, but in terms of writing military sci-fi like this, both, the human on human of the Bravo War and, now human versus the aliens, how much research and what kind of research goes into creating something believable for near future military sci-fi?
I spent a week last year at Best Ranger competition as a member of the media. So I got behind the scenes. I got to crawl into a tank. I got to play with guns. I got to do all sorts of stuff as a member of the media because I immersed myself in that. I'm doing another series called Tenure with Mike Barron from The Punisher. And so we talked about a certain gun that this guy used. I went to the manufacturer and spent half a day, with the gun, And so, there's research you do to do this.
One of the coolest ones he did is when we realized we wanted the song in book 3 for the British forces in
the
Battle of
Queen's
London,
Royal
right?
Hussars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. And we realized we couldn't find a recording of the song anywhere, so he reached out to the command.
And they reached out to British military command.
Make sure you get it
I
right.
contacted the Royal Hussars band. They're available online, and I was like, I'm including this in a book. Can you send me the music, and the lyrics? And they're like, absolutely. And they did.
Yeah, they were so happy.
Yeah. I mean, from my experience, whenever I want somebody to come on the show, I just ask nicely, and most people are very happy to talk about the stuff that they enjoy doing. So it seems to work.
Yeah, that's how it was in a lot of the research we do.
Yeah. Oh, man.
And I'm sure we get some stuff wrong. Don't get me wrong. I'm not perfect, and I never claim to be. We get some stuff wrong, I'm sure. And I'm sure there's stuff that makes some people cringe a little bit, and they go, oh, it's not 100% how it really works. Well, it's also 20 years in the future.
Exactly what I was going to say.
So you don't know how things are going to work 20 years in the future. And so, as long as you're enjoying the story, it's going to be okay.
Yeah. I mean, ROEs tend to change quite quickly depending on the situation. So,
well, I had a guy send me a long thing because we had a thing where they blew the ballast tanks. And he goes, they don't really blow the tanks. That's not what we do. It's right. And he gave me a dissertation, which is great information, and I'll use it going forward on how ballast works on a submarine and what I needed to know. Mm-hmm. But literally, he was reacting to a line where a character said, blow the ballast tanks. And to him, that was like the most important thing. And it's clear he has a background in these things. And it's fine. If you think that's going to help me, I'll take your dissertation on ballast tank operations and I'll use it going forward. So we're cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've always loved it when fans reach out with I'm a specialist in this area. Here's this thing. I'm like, that's degrees of details that will really help flesh this stuff out as we go forward. Like, that's great.
It reminds me of whenever somebody leaks classified materials on War Thunder just to say, no, this tank should be able to take this particular hit. Here is this massive, DOD or, Slovakian military document here from my actual job that I'm not supposed to show, but I'm showing you because I really care. And then the guy gets court-martialed over it. And it's like, okay, free publicity for us. Please stop sending us stuff.
What I like is when we did the tankers, especially, I had people coming back going, I was in a tank, and this is exactly how we act when we're in the tank. We're sitting here taking shots at each other and commenting about our body odors, and just we're acting like 5-year-olds because we're crammed in this metal tank, and we can't go anywhere or do anything. We're stuck in there, and it's like, okay, I also take those as compliments too.
Yeah, people underestimate just how claustrophobic military vehicles can be, because there's that economy of space in all cases. Like, you're at the back of an LSVW with a whole bunch of radio equipment, like I was at times, and it's just there's room for maybe 2 people at most in there, and you've got all these radios and all this cryptographic gear and stuff like that, and it's just like, and there's never enough light, and there's always something that smells weird because of the exhaust from the vehicle and stuff like that. It's just like, okay, we're doing this. It's just, you get to work.
I actually really enjoyed one of the scenes you added, that was how hard it was to climb in and out.
Yes.
Like, it's not like just like getting into a Honda Civic. Like, that's not how you enter and get in and out of these tanks.
Yeah, but that was a funny story, because I climbed into the M1 Abrams driver position at Best Ranger competition. I went up and said, I'm with the media. Can I get in and sit in the driver's seat? And they're like, well, you're with the media. Sure. So they popped the hatch, and I was 60 years old, and I'm like, okay, how do I do this? And the guy's like, here, I'll show you how to do it. Explain it to me. And I managed to slide in there, and it's like, okay, this is kind of cool. And I got to play with the little, motorcycle accelerators and stuff. And I'm like, all right, I got a good feel for this. Okay, how do I get out? And he's like, well, you tuck your legs under your butt and push up. And I said, I have not done that in 40 years. So what you're describing sounds very entertaining, but I assure you, my knees, my ankles, and my ass are incapable of performing this operation. And he's like,
you said it exactly that way.
I'm not paraphrasing. And the guy's looking at me like, and all I could think of is, this is going to be like Winnie the Pooh getting out of the honey tree. He's going to be like buttering the sides of the tank and having to call the media coordinator over as they have to, extract me from his tank. And so he's like, look, I'm going to stand here. I'm going to reach down. You're going to grab my arm, pull up, get your feet under your butt, and then let's go. And I'm like, all right.
And come on. If you told me they coated you in butter, that would have been a much more entertaining experience.
But I got to tell you, man, present, watching and filming.
Oh, I know.
If you see the picture of me, if you had seen me when I came out of the tank, I am wringing wet and sweat.
In today's news, New York Times bestseller Blaine Pardoe was extracted from a military vehicle using copious amounts of Crisco.
Yeah, it could have happened. It was that close.
Oh God! I think the only thing worse than that would be one of those ball gunners in one of those, World War II bomber planes. The guy was like under the plane, like those little clear enclosed plexiglass things, glass balls. Just like, please don't shoot me! Please don't shoot me! Please don't shoot me! All crinkled up in a little ball, trying to shoot it at German planes. It's just like, oh God.
And I got to use that whole scene. I ended up rewriting a scene in my next book for Blue Dawn that's coming out this next week. I have a scene in there where the guys are crawling into the tank, because I got it go in the turret too.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And it's like, I use that stuff. So, if you ask the military nicely, and if you're an established writer, they'll let you do stuff. Yeah, I got an offer to go up to Rhode Island to go tour a submarine 2 weeks ago.
Nice.
And I was like, I was tied up, but I get offers from the military like, hey, you want to come up and crawl around the sub? I'm like, can't this week, but if it works, I got news for you. I'm going.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not the kind of thing these are the kinds of offers one, just politely accepts. Well, then you hang up. It's like,
oh yeah.
This reminds me also of a scene in I think it's in Flexible War, where there's an Asher that's like blacked out, power out, and the pilot is stuck in there, and
can't
the
get
fish
out.
are crawling around. It's just, imagine, just like people underestimate. I think also with in mech fiction, just how goddamn claustrophobic it is in one of those things. Like, if the power goes out, the lights go out, the displays black out. I think
fan goes off.
Yeah, I think
Got
it's
no weight ventilation.
There's a scene in one of the Gundam series, the 8th MS team, where the main character's mech gets powered down by an enemy EMP attack kind of thing. Shoots a cable on it that shuts it down, and everything goes dark, and he has to, like, in the dark, start moving components to try and restart his mech. And it's like, yeah, he's freaking out the whole time. It's just, yeah. And those cockpits in that series are pretty big. The ones in the being stuck in an Asher is like, you're in a coffin.
Oh yeah.
Be a lot tighter.
Yeah. And usually you don't have horrifying monsters crawling around trying to, claw their way in either.
Well, that's the thing. It's the terror, and you're trapped. You're in the safest thing on the battlefield. It's no longer the safest thing on the battlefield. It's a target.
Yeah. But I loved how she still felt so exposed that she, like, pulls her gun. She's like, I could shoot you right now. She couldn't shoot. It would just ricochet
back in her face. Yeah, exactly. You have to pop open the cockpit to do that. And wait, you can't, because everything's powered down.
Exactly. But still, the human nature is like, I gotta do something.
Yeah. Fight, flight, or freeze. And in some people, it's fight.
Yeah. We got no ejection seats in our rigs.
No.
Yeah, unfortunately for the pilots. I mean, there's no room for them, really.
Right.
Yeah.
I love the tanker scene the scene where they call for backup. And they actually said, oh, yeah, we're sending in a missile that's going to hit here. They're like, oh, crap. Really? we didn't expect it. Like, we thought you guys had been out. Like, oh, man. And they end up having to bail out of their tank because it's going to kill them.
Yeah.
They're like, be careful what you ask for.
Friendly fire is never friendly.
Yeah. The one time the Air Force shows up, it blows up their tank.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, but speaking of this kind of technology and stuff like that, one thing I really, really like about the Ashers is the way they power their energy weapons. Like, because you have, all the power required to get everything moving around, but for those for the high energy, stuff like rail guns, lasers, masers, and all that stuff, you have those, it's almost like the concept of miniature bomb-pumped, laser. Like, there's the whole concept of the idea being that you have an explosive that goes off, and the energy from that is captured and used to power up the, whatever energy weapon that you're using.
Right.
Yeah. Which keeps, power, requirements realistic for the actual, my Astro suit itself, but also creates a scarcity. You're not just, going pew pew the whole time. You have
I don't get to shoot my lasers forever and never run out of anything.
Exactly. You have, logistical ammunition concerns as well.
Yeah.
Plus, you get the sound effect, which I think is, boom.
Well, and the fact that we made it like a semi-automatic Desert Eagle ejection slide to make the thing pop free. Like, there's a lot of bits to it, but like, those are all great elements. Come from the fact that obviously we come out of gaming, so we think about the mechanics of storytelling in a lot of different ways, from game mechanics to visuals to all this other stuff. So it was very neat.
Well, and our lasers don't show, so they're like real lasers.
Yeah, exactly.
So having the sound effect, I think, helps with the lack of a pew pew. It's bang, so something's going on.
Yeah. The only time you'd be able to see a laser in real life is if there's enough crap in the atmosphere for it to react with.
Yeah, dust in the air.
Oh, that's one of the bosses.
Oh yeah,
nasty looking bastard. Those things are just
Asher.
Yeah, that's about right. Oh, and it looks. I love how gnarly it looks in terms of, like, its musculature and the way it's built. It's like, it looks deformed, but in a way it's completely functional.
Exactly. That one of the big things is because we said we knew we wanted them to be bipedal, and one of the backgrounds, the more the research comes, it'll be revealed that until they encountered humans, the aliens had never encountered a bipedal creature, so they had no paradigm for it. So when they created one in the bosses, it's got triple jointed shoulders and double jointed, like literally 2 knees to elbows joints.
Yikes.
So even though it's bipedal, and if you look at it still, it kind of looks humanoid,
but it moves wrong.
The way it moves is creepy and weird and doesn't feel right on a primal level.
Yeah, it's an uncanny valley effect that they probably kept in once they realized, oh, this freaks them out. Okay, we're keeping this as a feature.
I'm pretty sure they didn't check on that, but it worked.
Yeah, well, they are intelligent. I mean, let's face it, they are going to understand to a degree human psychology. If you want to understand how to fight somebody, you need to know how they think to a degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Blaine begins to delve into that in book 7.
Nice. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. I mean,
and I'm pretty sure I can say confidently that it will not be what you expect.
Ooh. Okay. Now color me extra intrigued then. So yeah,
there's a whole bunch of stuff in book 7 I think is going to break some paradigms.
I mean, hence Cyclones of Chaos, that's for sure. As you mentioned, the things are going to get really, really hectic.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that, like, with the seasons, they will all kind of have an identity. And overall, season 1 is just confronting people with the reality that this actually is an alien invasion.
Yeah.
Because that was one of those first things you realized, if you're trying to tell it as a story as it's realistic, how much would you have to show? How much data? How much evidence would it take for people to actually believe in an alien invasion? Because it's such a trope, nobody would.
Yeah, they think it's a hoax with CGI and stuff like that.
Yeah, are we sure it's not a thing? So can we just delete all the things and start over and just chalk it to a sensor glitch or whatever? What does it take to actually say this is what it is?
It takes the alien stacking bodies. That's what it takes, unfortunately.
Yeah. And it was so funny how all of the movies and stuff have a paradigm of aliens are going to come to the planet and they're going to land on land. Why?
Yeah, there's way more water out there.
Exactly. 70% of the planet is water. It seems like we would be far more attractive to an aquatic alien species. That would be where they would go, and they would never talk to us. They wouldn't say, hi, we're here. They'd just go right in the middle of the sea, and they wouldn't say a word, and they'd go, we'd never, how would you even know they were there?
Yeah.
And that was one of those fun things in Splashdown of really confronting all of these characters with they wouldn't.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things.
And the realization is they've conquered 70% of the planet already.
Yeah. Under our noses.
Yeah. By the time we realize that we've actually lost control of the majority of our own planet, we are the underdogs. We are the bad news bears.
Yeah, which is a good place to, put, the heroes of your story already is starting in an underdog position.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of alien invasions, really, that is the more unknowable an alien, obviously that you can make here, for extraterrestrials. Obviously, I think those are probably the more realistic, quote unquote, in terms of how depictions. I always go back to Strugatsky Brothers' Roadside Picnic in many ways for, not necessarily alien invasion. It's the book that eventually inspired Stalker, the Tarkovsky movie, and the video games and stuff like that. But there, we never meet the aliens. They're completely incomprehensible to us. And the only idea we can have to understand what the heck happened is the theory that a bunch of completely alien entities stopped by on the planet, had a picnic, and left. And the detritus and leftover, cake and toast and, engine oil from when they changed their tires and, did a tune-up is all left over. And some of its stuff is incredible, like a tiny little cylinder battery that reproduces when exposed to gamma radiation and is now used to power electric cars the world over. Only we don't know how. So if the alien somewhere in the 11th dimension flip a switch to turn the lights off, all our technology shuts down. And oh yeah, to get those kinds of things, you have to walk into these zones that are complete wastelands. And if you accidentally touch a spider web that you can only see out of the corner of your eye, you're going to die of a heart attack in 24 hours. Completely unrelated. It's just that you're going to die of a heart attack, or a gravitational anomaly is going to rip you to shreds, or all sorts of insane things because physics has gone haywire. And we're like the ants crawling around in the leftovers of a roadside picnic. And it's just it's Lovecraft on a whole other scale at that point.
Well, we're dealing in this second season with how do we communicate with the aliens? And one of the things that they're talking about is we can't figure out how to communicate well with dolphins. Everything is against the framework of our language.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't communicate with them as dolphin. We don't, make the noise of a dolphin to communicate with them. We teach them to do things that mimic communication to us, but we don't speak the language at all.
No.
So, the concept of how do you crack that nut. It's like we haven't cracked it with any species on the planet.
Yeah.
You look at gorillas where they're like, oh, well, we teach gorilla sign language. You've taught a gorilla how to communicate in your language or a language you understand.
Ooh, nasty Beaufort bite on that thing.
That's a good one. Those are my favorite. Those are the foxes.
Those are the foxes? Yeah, the alien scout units.
Yeah.
Nasty.
Really strong.
Oh, yeah. It's like, trying to get into a fist fight with a chimp with Wolverine claws.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you got the frogs, which, spit toxic, goop at their enemies too, which is even nastier. Yeah.
We had a long talk about what did we call the super frogs? It was like Uber frogs now. And finally, we just settled on Urkai.
It's like, let's
because that's what soldiers would call them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, because as you say, we don't learn how to speak the languages of other creatures around the planet. We just kind of teach them to.
We teach them how to communicate with us.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like speak, dog, speak, or teach them how to do tricks, but we don't actually learn how to speak dog. And also, there's the fact that I don't think we've ever seen exactly how the aliens communicate themselves. We know from Tides of Redemption that there's possibly some kind of telepathic thing going on. At the very least, there's something that gives people headaches whenever they're on their ships and in their structures.
Yeah, we know they're communicating, but we don't know what it is or how.
Yeah,
I get it.
That's going to be, as you say, it's serious tough enough to crack right there if we want to actually intercept their communications, possibly, and learn something of them.
Well, and all of that came from like the true, like when we were writing the origins of where these species started, 200 million years ago down the evolutionary line, and how would they go forward? Because you run through the logical thing, like, wow, that actually, this is not something that would be a one-time thing. This is not 1,000 years. Like, no, this is something that would. How do these species who significantly function so dramatically differently than we do?
Yeah.
How would they have developed?
And how then, considering that their technology involves a whole bunch of genetic manipulation and bioengineering, how have they changed themselves going forward? Or is it something else that changed them? Are these things actually the same species, or just, altered to different phylums? Or were these other species that an alien race has come, conquered, absorbed into their army, and just, reduced into slave soldiers genetically engineered to do their bidding? And are we next?
And they come from an environment that doesn't have light.
Yeah.
It's dark. They can't see anything.
They don't
so how does that change everything in your paradigm? How do you see anything coming? What do you do? It's awesome how dramatically different they are. And so when we crafted and are still crafting the nuances about their communications.
Yeah. Like the bosses.
We really kind of threw a lot of stuff that we take for granted right out the window.
Yeah. Like the bosses, they discovered that their bodies are under immense pressure to keep the pressure inside. Whereas when we go down to the deep sea, we're trying to keep the pressure out.
Right.
It's the complete opposite paradigm for them.
Yep.
And then they just twist their arms off when they get damaged and stuff like that. That is just that is the first time that happened in one of the books. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah, I was expecting that people would hit that and then stop and then go back and reread the line a couple of times to make sure they understood. Is that really what it says?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I'm pissed.
Which is actually one of those things that you kind of want, where there's a paradigm within game design where the mechanic is the message, where the game mechanic is literally mimicking the storytelling you're trying to convey. And that was one of those moments that did that, where you're like, wait a minute, stop, what just happened? And if you can get that to react from somebody reading a book, that's a good moment.
Yeah. I mean, if ever you do a first person shooter or something like that, Land and Sea Call of Duty edition or something like that, which would work really well with the multiple perspectives. Some of the best COD campaigns have that, where you're jumping between characters. But yeah, having you in the cockpit of an Asher, unloading railgun shots at a boss and blowing off a limb and having it keep coming after you like that. That is so terrifying.
We always have this degree of badassery of I'm going to rip your arm off and I'm going to beat you with it. The idea of I'm going to rip my own arm off and beat you with it is somehow nastier. I don't know. Like that's badass to a degree that I don't quite know how to equate.
Yeah. Again, that happened in that Gundam show I was talking about earlier. Immediately after the guy powers this thing up, he takes his damaged arm, rips it off, and beats the other mech with it.
Yeah, I just think that's just generally badass.
There's something to be said. I hate you so much, I'm going to maim myself to hurt you.
Exactly. This is how mad I am at you right now.
Local man, literally too angry to die. Wonderful stuff. Oh man, I love this shit. This is great. This is one of the reasons why I like talking to people who make the stuff that, I enjoy, is because there's all this behind the scenes detail and just seeing the enthusiasm of the people who are creating this stuff. It just makes it more fun to get involved with all these things, whether it's the books, comic books, the games, and all that stuff. It's just all this stuff that surrounds the actual IP. The IP itself is great, but the stuff that surrounds it and the enthusiasm that grows from it is, I think, one of the things that attracts people to it, which is, I'm glad you guys are here on the show today.
Well, thank you. We're glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Check out our Indiegogo, guys. We've got a good one going.
Yeah, Land and Sea Paradise. If you want to see how Hawaii deals with a very, very bad shellfish infestation, well, that's the place to go. As you say, Cyclones of War is the next book down the pipeline. That's going to be coming out. Cyclones of Chaos. Sorry. Flotsam of War is the previous one. Cyclones of Chaos is the next book down the pipeline for Land and Sea. When do you expect to be able to read that one?
I'm hoping June, because our narrator just started it.
Yeah, I'm hoping late June. It may be early July, depending on how, logistical stuff happens, but in that window, early summer.
Yeah. And as far as the tabletop game, that's currently in development, so we're not going to be seeing that for some time, I imagine.
We're going to start doing the alpha play testing pretty soon. Nice. Reinforcing just the baseline core mechanics so that when we do the beta, we can do all the stuff you add on top of it and really make sure the thing is bulletproof for a launch. So
yeah.
We're getting closer than...
Yeah. In terms of general complexity, how do you see it in terms of rule complexity and stuff like that, and ease approachability and stuff like that?
I would call it a moderate crunch.
Moderate crunch.
But the caveat to that is we're actually doing 3 rule systems side by side. The role play game, the tactical miniatures game that's squad based, and then the full tactical game that's battlefield wise.
Nice.
The key there is it's all the same game system.
That is good.
If you learn one, you know how to play the other 2.
This is good. This is something I keep harping on for people who are doing something like, a combination war game and RPG kind of thing. Scalability is key. Correct. You have your different scales. You have the individual ground scale, which is the RPG. Above that, you have skirmish level, like one squad versus another squad. Tactical level, which is, battle group size. Maybe like a fleet scale where, the miniatures of a aircraft carrier you'd have is the base size or something like that. And then you have the whole strategic level, which is XCOM Geoscape kind of thing or a risk map where you're moving your armies across things. If you can get those things to line up with a similar set of mechanics and then ability to zoom in and out like that, it
removes the barrier for people to jump between the things.
Exactly. It's certain things before we started, I mentioned Alexander Mechs, Adventurer Conqueror King. He does Domains at War, which is another, a war game for a, fantasy RPG that goes with that. And those things, scale perfectly with that. Those things are designed to work together. Plus, the whole, domains level stuff for that is perfect for that kind of thing, for if you want to go for the top down to the bottom down for that kind of thing. Another RPG that I like quite a bit is the Silhouette system, the DreamPod 9, a Canadian RPG company came up with. Heavy Gear, Jovian Chronicles, Gear Krieg, again, Mechs. I've covered these guys quite a bit on the show. But that one, too, had that kind of scalability, which is, perfect, especially for mech games, because those ones inherently require differences of scale, because you've got the pilots, but you also have the machines, which are significantly bigger and more capable on a wider range. And
what we've really stressed too is playability. We want the games to not be 6-hour things. You know, we wanted, so if you want to play a skirmish game, tabletop, you sit down a half hour, 45 minutes, you fought the battle to the last guy.
Yeah.
And that is, you know, we want people to be able to sit down and do tournaments and do, you know, we recognize that today's gamers don't have 8 hours to burn on a weekend.
Yeah.
You know, and so let's write a game so that they can play in the time frames they do have available.
Yeah, because everybody's got family and jobs.
Yeah.
I have a 3-month-old son now, so yeah.
Hey, congratulations!
Thank you. But it does impact one's time when it has to dedicate to tomfoolery around with giant robots.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Although admittedly it has its own rewards in that regard, so I'm not really saying you regret a thing.
Totally agree.
But yeah, I'm looking.
You didn't have a son, you grew a future opponent.
This is true. This is very true. I mean, I do need someone to game with, so he's getting voluntold. So we can expect then as you say, the game is starting into alpha, and you'll if it grow from there and develop into
it'll be there soon.
Nice. I am looking forward to seeing what comes next for the Land and Sea. That's for damn sure. And I'm glad both of you were involved in this because I think this particular IP is in very good hands.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Is there anything else you guys want to shout out? How can people get in touch for figuring out more things from Land and Sea?
Hey, there's a Facebook fan group.
Yeah.
Go there. They're very active. There's a group on Discord.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes, right here. I'll have the links for both in the description. So anybody wants
definitely
to check
jump
that
on the
out.
Paradise because that's going to be a great story you're going to love having.
Yeah, the link for the Indiegogo is going to be in the description as well. Everybody should go check that out, see if that's your cup of tea as well. Land and Sea by Brent Evans and Blaine Pardoe. Gentlemen, it has been a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you very much. It's been a good time talking about something we enjoy.
It's been a pleasure talking about something I enjoy too. I mean, anybody in the mood for some surf and turf? I'm in the mood for some surf and turf.
Oh, here you go.
Oh, there we go. I'm gonna get the Pepto first, though. For everybody, I have been Zero. This has been Blaine Pardoe and Brent Evans. Thank you for watching. We're out of here.
All primary objectives complete. Mission successful.